It's beautiful.
Congratulations.
My head
looks so weird on this
Let me
green
talk,
screen.
David. I'm congratulating you.
I'm sorry.
So huge congratulations, David Canter's company. DEC was just acquired. DEC Management was just acquired by GSE last week. He is now going to be working with Russ. Very exciting times. One of the leading NFL agents for many, many years. David's company is now being merged into GSE, which will now have an incredible football division. So congratulations to both of you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amanda, but just wanted to go ahead and say
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you for having me as the moderator. So my name is Amanda. I am the full-time business of college sports reporter for Front Office Sports. I write a newsletter called FOS College. And as you can all imagine, I spend most of my time writing about NIL these days. So I'm really excited to speak with you all. I think where I would really like to start is I would love if we could just go around and the three of you could give us an indication of 2 months into NIL. What are some of the biggest takeaways from your perspective, from a sports marketing perspective? And maybe David, we can start with you.
Sorry, I'm out on this.
Someone made a great point in the previous panel, which is these kids are finally getting their due, right? They've waited, however many hundreds of years since the NCAA was founded. I don't know if my math is correct there, but they've been robbed. I remember Charlie Ward was a big Florida State quarterback. I think he won the Heisman Trophy, played in the NBA, believe it or not. And I remember there was like a Visa Charlie Ward Florida State Seminoles credit card and his jersey, and there was millions of dollars. And you just think about all of the players now finally having their rights, their names, their image, and the ability to monetize it with great companies like GSE, with Mike Raymond, with the previous panel. And so for me, it's just exciting having been a college athlete, not that I would ever have made $1 at Ithaca College. And there was no Instagram back then 100 years ago, but I think it's super important for these young men and women to capitalize on something. I said this in a previous panel, you're not going to ever see a woman softball player, or probably most women volleyball players or other sports, field hockey or whatever, really be able to monetize their talents on the field as athletes. And so for me, NIL is far more exciting for the sports that we don't know about. We all know basketball, baseball, some soccer, obviously, certainly football, but for the sports that maybe you don't know as much about, this is tremendously exciting. And so for me, that's the biggest takeaway, at least thus far.
Russ, let's go to you next.
Yeah, I think it's been really, liberating for everyone. I feel like that we've just sort of had the handcuffs on, and it allows you to just get fun and creative, and the players that we're working with are really game, and they're sponges, and they're coachable, and they're excited with this opportunity. And it's been really invigorating for us, a shot of adrenaline. And, for us as recruiters too, it's nice to get some incoming calls now and then. So there's a lot of people that were, I guess, caught a little flat-footed on this, and we were happy that we were ahead of this, and we're started working on this over a year ago. So we all anticipated this coming. So when the floodgates were open on July 1, we were prepared and excited about that. So far it's been great. And, we really like the men and women that we're working with, and we're excited to keep growing in this platform.
Yeah, guys, so I'll go now. First of all, appreciate you guys having me on here. It's awesome to be on here with Russ and David. And David, I gotta try and match your energy, because I love it when you got on the panel at the beginning.
You gotta get more coffee.
Yeah, no, for sure. But
get the background to work.
Appreciate everybody, and especially you, Amanda. Thank you so much. And just to touch on that, it's definitely been a super exciting thing for me. I'm somebody that just graduated, from UCF 2 years ago. Now I'm at University of Miami on law school. So, I'm kind of like right in it. I see all these athletes every single day, and, I'm starting to hear about some of the deals, this and that. And, like David said, this is their dues. They've been waiting years and years for this, and we've been, pushing it for such a long period of time. It's super exciting for someone like me. I'm somebody that loves the marketing side of the business, not just the representation side. And especially when it comes to social media, kind of being a little bit younger, I've always been a big fan of social media and growing that. So very exciting for me. And I'm definitely just, looking forward to, as it continues to grow every single year. And that's about it.
And I have several questions, I think, really for any and all of you. I think one of them, especially, from your perspective, working with the athletes, maybe what are some of the challenges that you've seen in the last couple of months, whether obviously this is what everyone is calling the Wild West. When it comes to working with agents in particular, there's been some confusion, and every state has its own law. Well, not all of them, right? And then schools have their own laws. So I would love to hear about some of the challenges that you faced and kind of how you're working through them with athletes.
I think it's probably a better question for Russ and Michael, but I will say this, as we were DEC and soon, and literally less than a week ago becoming GSC, or maybe 10 days ago, I think the biggest challenge for me from the agency side is my sport, especially football, is already so corrupt. It's so reprehensible would be the best word to describe how high the corruption has gotten, and how widespread the corruption has gotten. Now you throw NIL to the mix. And I remember the first day of NIL, July 1st, I'm sitting here and I'm just watching Twitter and I'm seeing every deal, and every deal I'm like, it's complete bullshit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say bullshit, but now I said it twice. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That agency got that deal, of course, for that player who no one's ever heard of. And so there's a tremendous component from a competitive standpoint of a lot of fraud and a lot of misrepresentation and a lot of agencies that are in essence paying the player to do things that aren't really real, but they'll pretend like they're real, and the player will get the money. And then you're hoping that 6 months or a year, or 2 years, when now you can sign guys when they're practically out of the womb, you'll get your reimbursement, so to speak, based off of getting your 3% of your contract or what have you. And so for, at least for me, from a football standpoint, it's the elevation of the corruption to an even more extreme degree. But we've done an incredible job as GSE, not as DEC. As GSE, we've done an incredible job in really manufacturing real deals that aren't corrupt and aren't fake and aren't fraudulent. But I've seen a lot of stuff out there that I shake my head at and we kind of laugh at internally because it's so clearly, blatantly obvious.
There might be a coach or two stretching the truth a bit also to help their recruiting efforts. We don't need to name names. Sorry, Michael, I'll just jump in and then let you go. I think from our side, the only real challenges that we've faced so far is the whole, the regulation aspect. Again, we were ahead of this, and we got regulated in some of the states that you would expect to operate in. But suddenly July 1 hit, and it was musical chairs, and there were players coming that weren't prepared for this. And suddenly we were getting calls from random states that we may or may not have been certified in. So we're trying to do everything by the book. So the ramp up process of these random states getting certified is just, some of them took a little bit longer than expected, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize anyone's eligibility. So those players, we're just sort of saying, look, we have to hold off right now. And part of that also is, dealing with compliance. They've been great and doing the best they can, but sometimes our pace, just from where we came from, is we get an opportunity, we call the client says yes or no. If they say yes, we move forward. This has been, we call the client's interested. Okay, then you got to deal with compliance and let them just go through their vetting process. And sometimes they have questions or concerns, legitimate or not, but they have questions and concerns that give pause. And suddenly our pace and our cadence just changes. So we just have to be, cognizant of that and make sure that we're allowing enough time for these deals to go through.
Yeah, no, Russ, you hit the nail on the head with that. I was actually going to say the same exact thing. I think the state regulation and the compliance departments have probably been the biggest struggle. Not to say that they haven't been great. We were a little bit ahead of the ball game as well, and wanted to get state certified in some of the states that we knew that we were going to be active within. But like Russ and David said, we work in representation. We work with athletes. Like we're always trying to move the ball. And it's very difficult when sometimes you're bringing deals to players or you're talking to players that you want to potentially sign. And it might take weeks and weeks to, talk to compliance departments, talk to the states and get regulated, et cetera, et cetera. So Other than that, I think just educating and continue to educate all of the clients and the players that we talk to is the biggest thing. There was even players that I talked to that didn't even know about the state regulations and the athlete agent acts and that kind of stuff. And, you see marketing managers and friends of friends, starting to make deals for these guys where they can actually be violating, they can be really getting in trouble by doing this. And, they're just doing it anyways. And the thing is we're not seeing that regulation yet because it's still so new. But I think as the years go by, it'll start to change a little bit. But it's definitely the wild, wild west, which is the best. I hear a lot of people have said that in the previous panels. That's the best way to describe it.
To piggyback off of Michael, I think it's super important for people that are understanding the dynamic of this maybe for the first time. You have universities that have their own rules to the team, to the players, to the individuals related to what their reporting standards are. So for example, I represent Brant Keithy, who's playing tonight, University of Utah tight end. And one of the craziest components was I submitted, as I believe the regulations meant, my NIL documents and all of my deals to the director of football operations at Utah. And I got a phone call and I'm looking at it, I said, oh, University of Utah Athletic Department. I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm in trouble. And it was actually them calling me to compliment me because I was the only agent out of 17 guys that had signed NIL deals that actually did what the rules were from Kyle Whittingham, the head football coach. I had no idea. I just thought that that was the right ethical thing to do. So imagine, and Utah is obviously a smaller school, even though it's in the Pac-12, it's a small market. You're not going to do a ton of marketing nationally for Utah unless you're a high draft pick. Even if you're, my client's sister, who's the best volleyball player in the world, Danny Barton, she's not going to make millions of dollars, but if she plays overseas, maybe she will, and things like that. So when you think about the different universities, now you amplify that to a program that has so many great sports, so much talent, so many great young people that have huge Instagram followings or are really good at their sport or really good on the national scene. Those compliance departments can't handle it. Like I know this because I've dealt with compliance departments for 25 years as an agent. They might be a 3-person, maybe a 5-person operation. Now you've got NIL for softball, you've got NIL for volleyball, swimming, badminton, golf, tennis, racquetball. It's just literally, it's not only the Wild Wild West, but it's horrible for the programs because and I know if there was actually an investigation being done, it is people paying their friends and hiring their cousins to get them deals with the trash company that never actually will be a real deal. And everybody and their sister knows it's fake. Everybody and their sister knows it's not real, but the players don't care because they're making money for the first time ever. And God bless them for that.
Yeah. And to speak to a point you made earlier, just kind of how you mentioned it was a bit obvious what deals may be a bit sketchy or, whether there's fraud, whether there may be a deal that could be taking advantage of an athlete. And not all athletes are going to have agents. Many of them will, especially obviously the ones that, are well known. But I would love if you could all just give some advice. If I were, which I am not, if I were a college athlete, what would you suggest that I look out for? If it's just me trying to figure out, people are DMing me, companies, like, what is your advice for that?
Yeah, I could touch on that. Just real quick, I'll just say number one is educate, right? Everybody should be learning just as much as the athletes should be learning. We should be learning every single day because it's new for us. Something that I've noticed that a lot of brands have been, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but I've noticed it a lot is like the usage and exclusivity rights in a lot of these deals. A lot of the athletes don't understand, when they sign a $350 deal for an Instagram post, that brand is throwing in a usage rights part where, they can use that for the next year or 2 years. And, that's money. That's money. Like you should be not only getting paid more, you should be trying to get it as low as possible. So, there's a lot of different things that I've noticed, but I think just being patient and really educating yourself, continuing to learn, kind of like what David said, is talking to the compliance departments, talking to your head coach, making sure that you're not doing anything you're not supposed to do. But the schools are still wondering what they should be doing, half the time. So, I know I have a player that was talking to his compliance department yesterday and they weren't even sure about what he should be doing with one of the deals. So it's like, we hear a lot of different things and it's definitely something that we're going to just continue to have to learn off.
We've been trying to look, the types of people that we've been signing, we're only signing them for the NIL period that we're allowed. obviously we're hoping that this relationship extends well beyond this period. But the agreements last for the period. But our biggest advice is let's not do anything to cannibalize future opportunities. So to Michael's point, if people are coming and they're giving you lowball offers, if it's going to be in a competitive category, don't bet against yourself. We think you're great. You're great. Let's do stuff. If it's a good deal, and it's a good deal knowing our experience and our perspective on where they might be at the next level, if it's a good deal now, then it's okay. If it's not, don't just take short money and bet against yourself, especially in these competitive categories. The QSRs seem to be really active and things, obviously memorabilia and trading cards. And you don't want to just do stuff that's going to shortchange yourself if you're really a pro prospect. So that's probably been our biggest piece of advice that we've been sharing.
I work with Russ, so whatever he said is exactly how we operate. But he's right. Making sure that the deal is just for the time frame that you're allowed to do it for. Someone asked a great question about going back to high school players and trying to sign those guys. It's hard enough to keep track of the future seniors and the 2,000 guys that are already in our sport and the ones that are marketable. So, for us, at least, in our organization, I would think that's probably a little bit more unrealistic. If you are going to go after a high school athlete, it's got to be someone who is a future Olympian, someone who is clearly the next LeBron, so to speak, or a first-round baseball prospect, or a five-star quarterback recruit that's going to go to a major college and be able to really be marketable across all of the brand and innovations that you can do with NIL.
Yeah, and sort of following this advice column, I guess. How should an athlete determine what the market rate is? This has been a big conversation in NIL. A lot of folks I've spoken with for stories have said, we don't know what the market is going to look like. We don't know what the rates are going to look like. But then on the other hand, some of them say, well, when it comes to social media endorsements, for example, we can take the market rate in just the influencer industry and try to calculate out, what you might expect. But, if you're an athlete, how do you know if you're getting a lowball offer?
It's a great question. That's why you have to hire, major companies, not just your mom and pop that have never done this before. Try to be with brands that have obviously, or marketing companies that have done thousands of deals, hundreds of thousands of deals, because at the end of the day, you're going to go with someone that's like, let's take the fast quarter instead of the slow dollar. And the slow dollar usually ends up equating you a lot more money, unfortunately. So it's hard. It's a very, very risk adverse type of thing with NIL, because you could go out and sell your autograph for $1 a signature on a trading card deal. And then you go in the second round next year, and that's no longer $1 because you've already sold it for $1. Now it's 50 cents. You just lost 50% of your money. And a lot of players don't understand that dynamic. The trading card companies do. They're sure going to take advantage of guys that have, and girls that have bad representation. And that's the business of business, right? Athletes don't have that focus. They don't have that time, that energy. There's no market research on this. We're 4 months in, 2 months in, we're nothing in. And so you don't know who got what. Plus, it's so scattered, as Michael said, where you've got a cousin that represents his sister, his brother's uncle's father, friend, the dog is involved with the marketing deal. You don't even know. And so there's schools that, like Ohio State's a great example. They've got a local guy there that's crushing it. Name of his company, NIL Marketing. Brilliant. Holy cow. He's got 20 guys. He happens to be a friend of mine, but he doesn't know what's going on at Alabama. He's not national. He's, focused on his little private deals. And I'm sure that Ryan Day and the people at Ohio State really like him and trust Zach because he's a good dude and he's related to some of the players and he's done deals in the past, but he doesn't necessarily know what the marketplace is in New York or in LA. And I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm just using this as an example. A lot of this ends up being regional, and you just can't really get a barometer on what the national numbers are. And then you go sport to sport, right? And as you go down from the bigger sports to the smaller sports, who knows what the dwindling returns are for those athletes. And it's almost like a big money grab where everybody's got to jump in and get as much as they can as quickly as possible.
Yep.
Hey, I got nothing else to say. David hit it perfect. When I look at some of the local deals, I think that's kind of one of the things that is a little bit different than the social media deals. When I talk to athletes and try to break down deals for them, there's a lot of different metrics that you can use. Depends on what social platform they're doing the deal on. For example, an Instagram post compared to an Instagram story post is completely different. TikTok posts are different than YouTube posts. So there's all kinds of different platforms and different prices and ways that you can kind of measure that. I do think it's interesting to kind of look at the influencer space as a way to like kind of compare with athletes and their followings and that kind of thing. We work with influencers as well, so I've kind of seen that comparison. But no, David is absolutely right. I mean, he hit it right on the head. We're not, we can't pay attention to New York. We can't pay attention to California. This is 2 months in, so we don't know necessarily. There's no blueprint. There's no exact number. But yeah, having good representation is probably the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So switching gears a little bit towards maybe kind of your expert opinions on the market itself. Obviously, I know that it's literally impossible to keep track of all of the deals. On July 1st, my social media colleagues tried to do an NIL tracker, and it was absolutely just unbelievable. I was quite a day, obviously. But I mean, is there maybe a type of company, whether it be like cereals or nail polish or, like some sort of brand that you haven't really seen jump into this space that you think, it might be beneficial for them to consider NIL?
We've been monitoring a lot of just let's say, because a lot of the NIL stuff happening right now has been football focused. Been looking at a lot of the NFL sponsors and their competitors, and it seems like for the most part, they're taking a wait and see approach. Haven't really seen too many of them get aggressive there. There has been a lot of, still national brands activating on a local basis, but it's just been different ones, not necessarily like official, formal, NFL sponsors. So that's been an interesting thing for us to monitor. But it's been, QSR has certainly been a very robust category, it seems like, and it's something that we're just trying to stay on top of. And then we have different players in different parts of the country. So there's, different companies that are more relevant in those markets.
Something that I'm excited to actually see is how esports starts to get involved with all the NIL players. I think that's going to be something that continues to evolve every single year. I haven't personally seen a specific esports company or a brand or a team get involved yet, but I do think that's going to happen. I'm sure like FaZe and 100 Thieves and those kind of big name teams are going to start trying to find ways to get involved. They had Bronny James as like a big ambassador for FaZe, and that's a huge thing. I did see Beats by Dre just did a deal today with Deion Sanders' son, so like that was pretty interesting to me. But yeah, other than that, I think another one that just kind of caught my eye is some of like the gyms, like the UFits. I know we just had Planet Fitness on, the YMCA's and those local health and fitness companies. I know they've been pretty active, but I'm just excited to kind of see as that continues to grow.
I think it's a great point. I think the companies that haven't jumped in maybe necessarily they don't have data, right? A lot of these companies are data-driven marketers and data-driven advertisers, and it's companies like Influential that can monitor this stuff and provide that information for them. That's what Chris and Ryan have done such an incredible job, really being, the innovators, not to just use brand innovators, but the innovators of an industry that really didn't exist 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years ago. I remember when, you would see, oh, so-and-so got $1 million for a post. Every person in the world's like, what? That's insanity. Now you're seeing that trickle down to an NFL player getting 5,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 for a post static or obviously in his story. And I think that that's part of the industry that is really untapped. And until companies, whether it's, a FaZe or a Facebook or some companies that really rely heavily on analytics like Google or other tech companies that really base all their advertising dollars on how many clicks or how many eyeballs are on a screen, you're not going to necessarily see those companies jump in right away. It's easy to say, hey, a local Ford dealer gave a kid a car to drive, right? He gave him the new Mustang. And of course, the kid takes pictures and he signs autographs. And after the game, the fans see him buy his car and maybe they get a pick, they get a signed football or something like that. That's a small regional deal. But until you're seeing real big 6-figure deals, I don't think you're going to see those big numbers until you have the analytics behind it and the data to show the people in the marketplace, this is where you really should be spending your money. You really should give a deal to Deion Sanders' son, for an example, as opposed to, you know, an NFL player, Aaron Rodgers, right? There's more return on investment. You're going to have him for a longer period of time. He's got a broader career span. He's got more fans and friends and people that know him and that want to be a part of him. And you get to track him, right? If you get a veteran guy, a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, obviously they're the pinnacle of the sport, but they're also more expensive. They also have an expiration date on their career and their contract because they're probably not going to play for 5 or 10 more years. Although Tom Brady maybe plays for 20 more years. He might be around longer than all of us based on how he looks. But that's a different conversation for another day. So I think that that's exciting too, is you have to find the companies that, as Michael said, that are younger, that are unique, and that understand the dynamics of what you're doing with college athletes, right?
Absolutely. And I'd love to talk specifically about the non-revenue sports, right? So outside of men's basketball and football. I spoke with someone the other day who sort of, he said that he thinks that he would advise, you know, volleyball players or lacrosse players, you know, to look at different types of NIL opportunities than, you know, the quarterback of a Power 5 team. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Obviously, NIL is more than just brands, right? Like there's autograph signings, there's events, there's clinics, all these other opportunities. But I was just kind of wondering all of your thoughts on that, and how you might advise the non-revenue sports athletes to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I think that unless they have a significant social following, I think the way to really go about that is aggregation. If they could sort of band together and offer volume, I think that's the way to play it with these companies. If they want to proactively sell themselves or vice versa, if I were a brand, I think that there's a lot of things that can be done utilizing the quarterback from a Power 5 program. And there's a lot of, depending what your good or service that you're trying to sell, your influence in that local market can easily be achieved through these non-major sports, I guess. And you could then, let's say, craft these partnerships in a more affordable basis, but you could aggregate and you can go out with just these mass offers. But I think it behooves these athletes to sort of band together and form their own little coalitions and say, hey, we have this critical mass now, because it's really hard for some of these big companies to even just manage tens, 20s, hundreds of contracts. So if the volleyball team just came together and said, here, we could do a deal for the entire volleyball team, I think that's a great way. And it is significantly impactful because they have a following locally and they have a following from wherever they came from initially. So I think that's the way or they could just band together with their friends or, find different, or the conference. There's a lot of ways to slice it up.
Yeah, I'll jump off what Russ just said, because that's an excellent point. I think collaboration is probably the number one way. Your network is your net worth. That's like everyone says that. And when you're at a big D1 school, why not collaborate with other teammates? Why not collaborate with the team, your friends, your family, etc. Another thing of advice that I would give is community engagement. There's a lot of things that you could do locally. It's going to be hard for a Boys and Girls Club to tell, 2 volleyball players or 2, golfers that they can't come in and have an event with, some young kids and try to inspire them. So I think getting involved with the charities and anywhere within the community like that would be a great way for some of those athletes. And then lastly, I would just say, really just keep trying to build on social media, right? You don't have to be a big YouTuber or a big TikTok star, but, try Instagram, see what works best for you. TikTok is the best platform you can have because it's a free audience. You can just upload every single day. There's no cap on how many videos you can upload in a single day or a single week. And, try to build your brand that way. And then, you could eventually start leading into those, those social media sponsorships that way as well.
I think that's a great point, Michael, but you have to remember, you've still got to be an athlete first, right? You still got to produce and perform at your sport. And It's really hard. I remember I was recruiting a player who just got cut in the NFL yesterday and signed to a practice squad. I saw that today. And to piggyback off of the TikTok thing, he's world famous on TikTok. Everybody loves him. Everybody follows him. And he never really capitalized on it. He never really made any money from it. And I remember having my meeting with him. And I said to him, obviously it was prior to NIL because he was in the draft this past year. And I remember saying to him, and I didn't get him as a client, I said, how much time do you have to spend coming up with the ideas, the concepts? You've run a business basically separate than you're being a college athlete. And when he didn't get drafted, one, I, kind of looked at my checkbook and I was like, phew. And then two, far more dramatically, I saw him get released and I saw his TikTok count drop, right? I saw that he's not posting as much. And so maybe there becomes the realization, do you want to be NIL, social media, Insta famous, or do you want to be a pro athlete? Like there's a huge toss up there. And the toss up is that the ones that are really good at social media, and I don't follow a ton of them. I don't have TikTok. I'm sorry. My children do, and I despise it, but that's a conversation for another day. Sorry, TikTok. We'd still love to do deals with you and take all your money. But that's a different conversation for another day. My kids love it. I don't. It's a different generation, right? I'm a father of 3 boys who like to watch TikTok and are obsessed with it and know the stars and the celebrities. Me, I started Twitter. Twitter was my big thing. I remember Darren Ravel is a good friend of mine, told me, hey, Twitter, this is it. This is where you need to be. So I spent time, and I was very controversial, and I still am sometimes, although I've toned it down now that I've gone to the corporate world of Russ Spielman. But I remember literally when Instagram first started, I couldn't get behind it. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. It wasn't Twitter, right? And then TikTok started, and I didn't like it. I didn't get behind it. There's a lot of work in social media, and it's a full-time job for the ones that are really good at it, whether it's the angles that they take their photos from, where they pretend like they are, the fake airplane with the scene with the window to pretend like you're flying on a private jet to Dubai, or you're doing something with a football and kicking it against the goalpost, or the crazy basketball stunts. There's an amazing kid that lives on a farm and he plays basketball in cowboy boots, and he's got all these wood contraptions that he makes and weights with sandbags and stuff. I've watched him. He's freaking awesome. I love that kid. He's amazing because he's creative and he's literally living on a farm, and he became an Instagram star. So it's the idea of what's the toss up. Do you want to be NIL rich or do you want to be athlete rich? Because athlete rich is a significantly different money, and you're going to make a lot more money as a pro athlete in the major sports in America or internationally than you probably are doing licensing and marketing deals.
Yeah, and speaking of banding together, something in this space that is definitely going to be getting bigger and bigger is group licensing. And obviously, something that I've followed is how, or I've learned recently is how in the pros, there are unions that negotiate group licensing deals. Obviously, there's no union in the NCAA for several reasons that we don't have to get into today. But some of the schools have tried to create sort of school-specific group licensing deals to create jerseys or things like that. I know also there's a company, I think One Team Partners, they claim that they want to be like a group licensing, they want to be the group licensing gurus. And I was wondering, what direction you all think that group licensing could or should go in college sports, because there's just such a market for that sort of thing. And obviously everyone wants their video games back. So.
I mean, I think there's most definitely a market for this. It's sort of touching on what I was saying with the aggregation. I think that One Team's great. They've done a good job with a lot of the unions. So I think they would be great candidates for this. And I think it is important for the peripheral sports and the peripheral players. But I grew up in this business, at ISI with the quarterback club. And that's something that, it's hard because we always wanted to market the most marketable players. So I understand that the stars have to help the less than stars for trying to be as politically correct as you can. But same sense, you can't sacrifice everything just to help the greater good, so we're still in a meritocracy around here. And I think that it's important for them to participate and to help and find ways to bring these groups together, if anything, just to get more business for everybody. However, the elite need to still be able to opt out or just get their own separate deals. And that's what, the quarterback club that I, again, grew up in did so well. They participated, but they also had their carve outs too. Because look, if we don't do that, then we're back to, then what is the point of NIL?
I think it would be fascinating to see the top 10 quarterbacks in the country in college band together, or the top 3 point guards from 3 different programs. You know, I don't know college basketball like you do, Michael, but you know, the biggest celebrities in their sport that play team sports really band together to kind of elevate everybody else. But you know this, Russ, it took one guy to have that vision, and it was extremely controversial. I remember the LA Gear deal. You guys got a tremendous amount of flack for it, especially for those of us that have been in the industry long enough to remember when that deal first came about with the quarterback club. And so the idea that you could do that and replicate that on a national level with NIL is genius. We should probably do that at GSE and start pitching it to the individuals, because there really is a tremendous power in being able to sign one contract and present to the company 20 different athletes who are all pinnacles of their sport, so to speak. And so I think that you gave away the farm a little bit there, Russ, in our branding strategy for how we're going forward. As of 3:33, whenever this Zoom is over, we'll be on a conference call with Ian and Ness having this discussion immediately. But no, I think it's a really good point that if you could actually do that, you'll have such power and influence that brands won't be able to turn away from you, because they won't be able to go anywhere else. And then hopefully it will, you know, in essence, elevate the guard or the center or the defensive tackle who nobody knows or cares about. No offense to the guards, centers, and defensive tackles. I still want to be your agent.
I'll just say something real quick. I'm no expert on group licensing, but I love what David just said. You know, the brands won't be able to shy away from, you know, the 3 best point guards in college basketball. But like Russ said, you want to have the star players, and then, you know, they can be involved, and then they also have the carve outs where they can go and do their own thing. I think that's super important going forward, but I agree 100%.
Well, we're coming up on time. So Chris, I will turn it back to you, but I just wanted to give an opportunity if anyone has any closing thoughts. You know, I'll turn it over. I don't know if Michael, you want to start this time, and then we can go to Russ and David, but thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, just thank you to everybody. This has been pretty exciting. I'm glad that I got to get on with all you guys. And, you know, I definitely think NIL is not going anywhere. You know, this is something new for everybody, and it's definitely going to be, you know, an exciting marketplace. You know, I'm excited for the relationship aspect of everything, you know, building relationships with guys in college, and, you know, being able to talk to them a little bit earlier than usual is fun and exciting all in one. So, yeah, I'm just excited for the journey. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for including me. I'm usually the, you know, the youngest old guy in the room. I'm usually pretty tech savvy, so I apologize that I couldn't get my virtual background to work. So I apologize. I really tried. I don't know.
All good.
But thank you. This was great, and I really appreciate it. It's a really exciting time for our industry, and you know, we're excited to be a part of it, and really excited to have David with us.
I'm just happy that I got the background to work, because my gym equipment is about 4 feet behind me, and I didn't want you to see what dumbbells I was going to do later on today. So, but no, thank you so much, Chris, for having me, and obviously for putting this together. Brand Innovators and obviously influential. You know, you guys are at the forefront of what is the biggest, most explosive thing to happen in sports in this country, probably in 50 to 100 years, if not ever. And I'm looking forward to doing these again. And Michael, it's great meeting you. Amanda, I appreciate your questions. They were fantastic. And everybody's feedback was awesome. We answered some questions in the chat, and I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you guys so much. That was an amazing session. Amanda, great work moderating. Love to hear the perspective of agents in the sport. Obviously, like David said, this is an exciting time, and we're all going to benefit for it. David, you're a legend. The people in the background were all dying at your quotes. That's a story for another day. Is going